Well, good evening and welcome to our virtual Committee of Adjustment meeting. On your screen, you'll see members of our Committee of Adjustment. Now, behind the scenes, we have many staff members with us this evening, and even though you won't see them, you will hear them chime in from time to time. Our Secretary-Treasurer is Lindsay Stamen, and our Clerk is Elizabeth Fawcett, who will be hosting the meeting and running the Zoom platform from behind the scenes. Now, the agenda and the schedules for the meeting have been posted on Dash on the city's website, and if you don't have those documents and you like to follow along, you might want to access them now. So we have 4 agenda items this evening, and I'd like to share with you the format that I'm going to be using to navigate through each application. I'll start by introducing an application, and then I'll give each applicant or their agent an opportunity to add anything further. If you are the applicant or the agent and you have nothing further to add, then simply say so. Next, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions of either the applicant or staff, and then I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Now, at that time, I'm going to be inviting members of the public to raise their virtual hand in Zoom if they have any questions or comments in respect of the application. If you do have a question or you wish to make a comment, please don't expect an immediate answer, because it's during this public portion of the meeting that we will be recording your questions and comments, and only after I close the public portion of the meeting will the questions and comments be addressed by the applicant, their agent, or staff. Next, I'll invite the applicant and or staff to address the public comments, after which I'll turn to the committee, ask them to make a motion, and then we'll deliberate on the application. At that time, if you're the applicant, you're free to leave the meeting. Now, I'll be using the same format for each application this evening, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Now, if you have a personal interest in any particular application and you'd like to receive written notice of tonight's decision, then please send an email with your name and address to our Secretary-Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen. Her email address is lsthamann@cityofkingston.ca. So at this point, I'd like to call on Elizabeth, our committee clerk, to confirm quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I can confirm that we do have quorum for this evening's meeting. I would like to note that Mr. Babin, Mr. Fudge, and Mr. Lightfoot have sent their regrets for this evening. Members of staff who are joining us are James Barr, Acting Manager of Development Approvals, Jason Partridge, Planner, Ashley Anastasio, Intern Planner, Matthew LeBlanc, Intern Planner, Lindsay Stamen, Planner and Secretary Treasurer, and Julie McCarty-Jansman will be our host for this evening. I would confirm at this time we have approximately 7 agents and applicants in the meeting, as well as 2 members of the public in the gallery.
Very good. Thanks, Elizabeth. So I'm now going to call the meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. and refer you to the agenda. Now, committee members, you'll recall that an addendum was received last week that corrected a duplicate condition on the Morton Street application, and it also added a 4th file for this evening. So the clerk confirmed with me that proper notice was given for the inclusion of this 4th file. So committee members, can I call for a motion to approve the agenda with the addendum? So moved by Jordan and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your hands, and that's carried. All right, so now we're back to the confirmation of the minutes of the June 21st meeting. I'm assuming everybody's had an opportunity to go through them. So can I call for a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Jordan and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your hands. And carried 3, 1 abstained. Okay, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And Vincent?
I just want to note that I don't know, because the first one, the first application, I don't know who the applicant is because of it being a numbered company.
I see. Okay, so okay, you're declaring a pecuniary interest because you. All right.
Well, I don't think I will, but I just want to note that we don't know who it is, so I can't. It's a lot harder to say.
That would apply for all of us then.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right, we'll note that you're not declaring a pecuniary interest, but actually I had a discussion with our clerk today about this exact same thing. Maybe it's something that we'll address after the meeting, but that's well noted, and I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so no disclosures of pecuniary interest. There are no delegations this evening, and we have no requests for deferral, and there are no returning deferred items. So item number 8, the first item of new business on our agenda, is an application for consent for highway number 38. So Lindsay, can I have you introduce this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our first application tonight is for consent at 3321 and 3311 Highway 38. The file numbers associated with this application are D10-008-2021 and D10-009-2021. Jason Partridge is the city planner on this file.
Great, thank you very much.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is 2 consent applications at 3321 and 3311 Highway.
Excuse me, Jason, we're just having a little audio problem. Can you maybe speak closer to the mic or adjust your volume upwards?
Can you hear me now?
About the same.
So I think we have to take,
If it helps, it almost seems that the mic is placed too far from you.
the microphone's up all the way. Can you hear me now?
About the same, but we'll muddle through.
Okay, I'll just speak louder.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for 3321 and 3311 Highway 38. It coincides with file number D10-008-2021 and D10-009-2021. Next slide, please. The purpose and effect of the 2 consent applications is to sever off 2 parcels of land at the property located at 3321 and 3311 Highway 38. The 7th application for file number D10-008-2021 will sever off 1 hectare parcel of land at the northern part of the property and will have approximately 61 meters of lot frontage along Highway 38. The 7th application for file number D10-009-2021 will sever off another 1 hectare parcel of land at the southern part of the property and will have approximately 61 meters of lot frontage along Highway 38. The retained lot will have 11.51 hectares of land with 62 meters of lot frontage along Highway 38. Next slide, please. So this is an aerial view of the property. It's south of Orchard Road and north of Van Order Road. Next slide, please. So the D10-008-2021 is the northern lot in blue, and the southern lot, lot 3, is D10-009-2021. On advice from staff, it was requested that lot 1 of the northern portion be reshaped to make a less irregular shaped lot, and this is also noted in the notice of decision drawing that's on. Next slide, please. So there was a few concerns from the public, so I'm just going to address them now. So one of them was a well water concerns. Part of the notice of decision, full hydrogeological study will be required to be done by the owner of the property. This needs to be done by a professional engineer or a professional geoscientist, and the owner has 1 year to fulfill this if it's given conditional approval by the committee. Next slide, please. Other concerns from the public were wildlife and environmental concerns. The Cataraqui Conservation Authority was circulated for this application and and they have reviewed the 2 consent applications, have no objections towards the approval of applications. Within the Cataract Conservation Authority review of that application, they considered negative impacts towards natural heritage features, natural hazards, and water quality protection. And additionally noted that an environmental impact assessment is not needed to support these consent applications. Next slide, please. Recommendation. The requested consent applications have attained the general intent and purpose of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw 7626. The proposal is under section 53.1 of the Planning Act. The 2 consent applications requested do not require a plan of subdivision and have regard to provisions of section 5124. The appropriate conditions are included in the conditions of consent as permitted under section 5312. Approval of this application will allow for the creation of 2 new lots with a single family dwelling use permitted on each lot. Thank you.
Great. Oh, thank you very much. So at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify themselves by name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jason Sands, and I'm a registered professional planner here in Ontario, and I'm here to represent the owners for this file.
Good. Is there anything further you want to add, Mr. Sands, to the record?
I think Mr. Partridge gave a solid, clear overview as to the 2 applications before you this evening. My only comment would be that, and as noted in the information update provided by Mr. Partridge, there's a slight change to the Lot 1 configuration on the northern portion.
Okay.
And that largely coincides with ensuring consistency with the irregular shaped lot policy within the city's official plan.
Okay.
And ensure a greater setback from the wetland area at the rear of the property. Aside from that, I'm happy to answer any questions that any members may have or members of the public who've joined us this evening.
Thanks. So just to confirm, so the change was to get rid of so we're talking the most northerly lot, to get rid of the little sliver and sort of square it off. Is that the change?
Absolutely correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Sands?
None.
No, none. Okay, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Actually, I just have one question before I move on. Why was a noise impact study done? I noticed that in the report.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer that for you.
Oh, speak louder, Jason. Just barely hear you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just barely.
Okay, so that was part of the circulation that was sent to the engineering department. The engineering department has indicated it needs to be done because it's right beside Highway 38. And that's part of the official plan.
Okay.
That a noise study will be required. And they have completed it, and it's noted in the notice of decision.
So is the noise study to comment on the effect of the traffic going by or the noise generated on site?
If there's any negative impacts on the new development.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. Okay, so I'll now open the public portion of the meeting and ask, are any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 3321 and 3311 Highway 38? And I see Mr. Farrell, you've got your hand raised, so yes, please. I'll just have you identify yourself by name and address.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Richard Farrell. We live at 3385 Highway 38, which is 2 properties north of the proposed Severn lot. We purchased this hobby farm. We have 47.8 acres, almost 50 acres. We purchased our farm in 2012 for retirement for a hobby farm. And the reason we purchased here was because we were completely surrounded by other hobby farms. So when you look at property 3343, Mr. Maynard's property, it is a 23 acre hobby farm. Across the road at 3338 is Steve, and I think he's approximately 25 acre hobby farm. And then to the north of me, which would be 3439 Highway 38, which is the 60 acre parcel that runs directly west of me, alongside me. That's a hobby farm as well. And then there's other hobby farms around me on 38. It's a stretch of 450 meters from my drive, sorry, the address would be 3403, which is two houses right directly across from Orser Road, to 3311 is 450 meters. We currently have 8 houses in this section of road, okay, and 3 barns. Now, that being said, I know in the letters that we submitted that are in the application that there was groundwater concerns. I'm very tested with my barn water at this time of year, especially with livestock. My well goes really shallow really quick in the summer months. We are prone to groundwater contamination here, big time. If we get heavy rains, water will turn brownish. I know the environmental issue was raised with the habitat and the animals and everything, and I agree with that. One thing I'd like to state is the city of Kingston has asked me and my neighbors to plant trees on my property because of the solar farms that were put in on Unity Road for the destruction of habitat, which we have done. And I question why I'm doing that if you're going to turn around and sever the property next to me and destroy more habitat and put 3 homes in. I know it's not a lot of habitat destruction, but 3 homes, 3 backyards, 3 dogs, cats, whatever is going to impact the habitat out here. I'd like to say this area, this 450 meter stretch of road, my driveway is at the top of the hill. So to the north of me is a blind hill because it drops severely at Orchard Road and goes down the hill. To the south, it is downhill grade, and there's a turn once you go in under the power lines. So in this stretch of road since 2012 that we have been here, we've had 5 major accidents, 2 rollovers at the end of my driveway, and I believe there's been 3 rear ends in that stretch of road between 3403 and 3311. If you go a little farther north towards Van Order, there was even a fatality up there. So it's a very bad stretch of road. In my driveway, when I pull out to go south towards Kingston, I have to run down the side of the road and I have to be very careful getting into traffic. Depending on the time of day, because of Highway 38 and the traffic has more than doubled since we moved in. If I want to go north at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I have to travel south and turn at Van Order in order to travel north. So it becomes a real problem, I think, for public safety to put 3 more accesses below my driveway. And when you're standing at 3311, you can't see my driveway at the top of the hill. So it's still quite steep. So that's the public safety concerns that we had. In closing, I just want to say, I'm not the type of person for telling people that own their land what they can or can't do with it. But I have a real problem when a numbered company comes in and buys a piece of property and immediately tries to sever it. And the only reason it's being severed is for profit. So I have an issue with that. I don't think that's right. I do want to state that the farm at 3439, which is the 60 acres, which runs on the west side of me. So 3439 would be north of me. But his property, if you look at the map, it's the one running right beside mine. It's 62 acres. That in 2014, after we had moved in, there was an application for severance on that property as well. And I believe it was going to be 3 houses put in there. There was 1 current house there, but there's 2 more wells already on that property to the north of me. That property got sold to somebody and the severance didn't go through. I do know for a fact that the property has been sold again for personal reasons, and a numbered company has bought that piece of land. So I'm pretty certain that we're going to end up with another application for the severance north of me to have 3 more houses put in over there. So I humbly ask you as a committee to vote no to this severance and support the hobby farms in the area. We need more green space, not less. I understand the process of building houses, but I strictly see this as this is a profit thing for somebody because the property had sold way over asking price with houses that were condemned and everything. Now, there was a comment made, and this is a question I have for the committee. There was a comment made about the 2 addresses And when I look at it, you list 3321 and 3311. Now, 3321, I believe, is the original log house from back when the homestead was originally done. I don't know if there's a heritage issue to that or not. I believe you guys are doing a study on it. But you also list that it's 3311. Now, the parcel of land sold as a 33-acre parcel as one property, not two. So I don't know why it has two addresses, unless it was back in the day of when they did, farms were allowed to build a second house on their farm as long as it was a relative or a farmhand worked in that or lived in that house. And I believe when the Emerys originally owned it, the son, Al, was the one who built the second house on the property. So I don't know if that's how that happened, that there was two houses on one property. Maybe somebody could answer that for me, if that's why there was two houses there. I know originally the Emerys lived in the old log house for a while, but that hasn't been lived in since I've moved here. I'm not sure when exactly they had left. So anyway, I thank you for your time. And again, I asked you to say no to this severance for us in the sense that we have nothing but hobby farms and rural life out here, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thanks very much, Mr. Farrell, for that. We'll definitely take note of that. Are there any other members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 3311 and 3321 Highway 38? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I'll call one last and final time. Are any members of the public here with us to speak to the application for 3311, 3321 Highway 38? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I'll just confirm with Elizabeth that we don't have anybody else who wants to speak to this.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. However, there is a member phoning in by phone. Perhaps just as a note, if you're calling into the meeting by phone, to raise your hand in Zoom, you will need to press *6. So, Mr. Chair, we'll just give that option and just verify one last time if there's anyone else who wishes to speak.
So I do see somebody is logged in here under telephone. So if you're listening in through telephone and you wish to make a comment, press *6 on your phone, and then your hand will raise and we can log you in. We can't bring you into the meeting unless you hit *6. Okay, so I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak to the application. So, and on that, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting, and we'll come back to the applicant or staff to address the questions that have been raised.
So through you, Chair. So one of the comments made was the well water. So we, as part of the notice of conditions, we will require a full hydrogeological assessment. Within that assessment,
yeah, Jason, it's just really hard to hear you. Your audio is very low.
So within the hydrogeological report for the well water, the professional engineer or professional geoscientist will have to look at quality, quantity, and interference and provide a report to our environmental service division so basically the engineer signs off on the report, and then our environmental division signs off on the report as well. So the well water is looked at, and it must meet within 1 year or the consent will lapse.
Okay.
In terms of the driveway concerns, in the notice of the decision, the engineering department has reviewed the application, and it won't be 3 driveways. The southern portion, the southern lot, so D10-009-2021, will have to enter into a private right-of-way with the retained lot, so that's the center lot, and only 2 entrances will be permitted. And so that's on the notice of decision for the D10-009.
Okay.
In terms of selling for profit, I don't think I'm in position to comment on that. So I'm not. So in terms of the 2 houses on the property, zoning bylaws in the past have allowed for two houses on one lot. The bylaw 7626 does not permit that today. So the applicant will have to meet the zoning standards of today, so one house per lot. In terms of the notice of decision, the applicant has noted that they will be removing all structures on the property, and then that's included in the notice of decision under the building requirements that the applicant must apply for demolition permits and complete the permits before the issuance of the certificate can be done. So they must complete that first.
Okay, just further here, I noticed that Mr. Farrell mentioned that at 3439, it was also purchased by a numbered company and suspects there's a possibility of future severances. How does that potentially affect or impact this going forward?
So in terms of it being a numbered company or an individual, as long as they follow the policy of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, they can sever a lot. However, there's other conditions they must meet. So like minimum separation distance, so that takes into the account of the barns in the area. Items like that, lot frontages to keep separations, stuff like that. So if I can't speak to a numbered company, what their intentions are, everyone has the right to apply for something. In terms of that, that's better.
Okay. And the other question was, why are there two addresses on this application?
So that was the historical part when I talked about two houses on the property. That the older bylaws allowed that, especially in rural environments. However, today they must meet the current zoning standard of only one house per lot, one single family dwelling per lot.
Okay, great.
So that it was a bylaw written in the past that allowed two houses, or those houses might have been constructed illegally. I'm not too sure. However, the notice of condition requires them to demolish them before an issuance of certificate can be done.
Okay, thanks for that. So committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or the agent? Okay, Vincent?
I was just wondering, they mentioned, the person mentioned that there were hobby farms in the area. Are there lots that are not hobby farms that are just dwellings?
Sorry, there's hobby farms around the property?
Yeah, because, well, the person mentioned that there was hobby farms, you know, he pointed them out, but are there lots that are not hobby farms that you are aware of?
Elizabeth, if you could pull up the presentation again and probably go to the slide. I don't know if I can share my screen, but and just click through a couple until we get to the area there, or go back one. So this is the aerial view. So some of them are vacant. So the property to the south is vacant. The property to the right is vacant. It's a hydro corridor in at the south. I believe the hobby farms are just a couple lots to the north. If the minimum separation distance report done by the Boulevard Group identified 3 farms to the north, a bit within a 750 meter radius. So those could be the hobby farms that were identified. Might look to Jason Sands to maybe comment on that as he did the minimum separation distance report.
Okay, I see Jason's hand is raised. Jason, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to assist in that question and Mr. Partridge's response, to provide some specific addresses, 3370 Highway 38 and 3403 are both parcels in the very close proximity to the subject lot, which are considered residential uses only based on their size and frontages. And further to those 2 parcels in close proximity, south of the hydro corridor that Mr. Partridge was speaking to, in and amongst the intersection of Highway 38 and Van Order Road, there's a cluster of residential dwellings, all of which are located on consistently sized parcels and frontages to what's being considered through this application. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And James, you had your hand raised as well.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I have nothing additional to add. I was just going to provide some context that there are existing smaller 1 to 2 hectare parcels in the area that are specifically sized for residential only purposes, which is consistent with the intent of the rural lands use designation in this area. Remember, this isn't designated prime agricultural. We are in the rural lands designation, which allows for limited residential development in accordance with the 2 severance policy, as well as farming uses. So this area does tend to typically develop with more of a mix of land uses rather than just straight agricultural or straight residential.
Okay. Now, just on the note of, we had a discussion earlier in our pre-meeting today. My concern was we had a numbered company that bought a piece of property, and we wanted to sort of kind of drill down to who are the beneficial owners of the shareholders of the company. Vincent was suggesting that that's important for us to know whether we need to declare a pecuniary interest, but Mr. Farrell was suggesting that it looks like a numbered company is, going around buying these properties with a view to making profit. But you kind of answered it an interesting way, James, and I thought maybe your answer might help other people see.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, it is something that I'm going to clarify with legal just to make sure that I am not stepping outside of my realm of understanding. But we do not here in the department discriminate or identify specifics through ownership of a property, whether it is owned by a person or a corporation. Corporations do have status to own land in Ontario, which is why you'll either see corporations as a numbered company or as an incorporated business like Hatchery Inc., like Homestead Land Holdings. These are companies that may have a complicated structure of ownership, but at the end of the day, the corporation is what owns it. And so an Ontario Inc. number is just another form of ownership, just as much as Joe Smith owning a property is a form of ownership.
Very good. Thanks for that. Okay, committee members, any other questions for the applicant or the agent?
Yes,
No?
I'll pipe up.
Yeah, Jordan.
I think I was just going to touch on what James said as well. Corporation can own land, and on one hand, it's strange to not know the name of the company director. On the other hand, it actually keeps us more independent in the sense that we don't know who it is. We're not biased in any sense. When Mr. Farrell spoke up, I think there was many things that he mentioned that aren't really relevant for the committee's consideration. One thing that was, though, arose in test number 2. Is the variance desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure? Specifically, is the proposal appropriate for the neighborhood or the community as a whole? Now, subjectively, Mr. Farrell and his gang aren't too happy, it sounds like. But now we hear there's also some smaller dwellings as well, as an aside from hobby farms. And so I'm asking staff what their view is in terms of, is the proposal appropriate for the neighborhood or the community as a whole? Because I know Mr. Farrell can't speak for everybody. And I just wonder if we have any other folks that have written in and commented.
So I can answer that. So for consent applications, we look at the zoning bylaw and official plan. So for the zoning bylaw, each lot needs to meet a minimum requirement of lot frontages, which they do, lot areas, and the official plan allows for each lot in a rural environment to sever twice prior to 1998. And this is what they are doing in terms of that. It also looks at other items. Is it appropriate in terms of minimum separation distance, ribbon development or infill development, and they both meet those policies there. Anything else? Is
this a minor variance, Jason, or no?
No, this is a consent. So originally was a delegated authority. So our director had authority to approve it. However, we received 4 public comments and it bumped up to the committee of adjustment. So now it's, the approval goes to the committee of adjustment.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Committee members, any other questions for the applicant or their agent? Okay, I see none. So now we'll turn it back. I'll turn to the committee for a motion. Somebody want to move it? We have to, okay, moved by Vincent and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion on this?
Peter, what's your take?
Well, I mean, my take was, I mean, originally when I saw the numbered company, I thought, yeah, this is a little more than just an interested landowner who is, you know, wanting to sever, you know, a piece of property kind of for the betterment of the community. But as I delve into it a little more, I see that it's probably a little more than that. It sounds like there are some homes that have been abandoned and haven't been there for a while, and it's maybe you know, cleaning up some of the land in the area or developing it. When development is not necessarily a bad thing. And I do see that 3311 will be retaining the bulk of the land, although it seems to be some of the zoning. I'm not sure if we get into, yeah, the retained lands. I don't know that how much of it is designated. No, it's all A2, so none of it's environmentally protected. So we're still satisfying the criteria. So in that respect, in all good conscience, I'd have no reason to deny it. Those are my feelings.
And that's how I feel as well, despite my empathy for Mr. Farrell. It's
100%. I hear all of that, and I live in the country myself on rural property, and I echo those comments as well, but we're still retaining the bulk of the A2 zone. So, you know, hopefully, I think, you know, any smart and busy person would use that and continue on the use of, you know, for hobby farming.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. So therefore, all in favor of the application, raise your hand. And that would be unanimously carried. Thanks very much. All right, the next application we have is number 8B, which is an application for a minor variance. Lindsay, can I have you introduce this to the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance, file number D13033-2021 at 95 Terry Fox Drive. Ashley Anastasio will give the presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thank you. Ashley?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Okay, great. Oh, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of committee. This is an application for minor variance. The applicant is seeking relief from side yard and rear yard setbacks, as well as parking space requirements to support the development of a self-storage building at 95 Terry Fox Drive. Next slide, please. This is the key map and neighborhood context map for reference. The subject property is within the Clyde Industrial Park and has frontage on Terry Fox Drive. John Counter Boulevard is approximately 37 meters south of the proposed development site. Next slide, please. The requested variances are as follows. Variances 1 and 2 propose a side yard and rear yard setback of 4.5 meters, where the requirement is 7.5 meters, therefore requiring a variance of 3 meters. Variance 3 proposes 8 parking spaces, where the requirement is 42, therefore requiring a variance of 34 parking spaces. Next slide, please. This is the site plan for the proposed development. Parking has been demonstrated by the applicant to be infrequent due to the transient nature of the business. The side yard and rear yard setback variances still allow for adequate clearance around the proposed development. Next slide, please. These are the renderings of the proposed building from the front and side views. Next slide. A sign was posted on the property, notice was mailed to 8 recipients, and a courtesy ad was placed in the WIG standard. At the time this presentation was finalized, no public comments have been received. Next slide, please. This application is recommended for approval.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify themselves by name and address, please.
Good afternoon or evening. My name is Mark Tao. I'm a planner with IBI Group. So we are representing the owner, and Mr. Paul Martin's also, I think, in the meeting as well. So he's available to ask questions or answer questions. We didn't have any particular comments beyond the staff report, so we are able to answer questions if there are any, though.
Very good. Thanks for that. So committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant, agent, or staff? Yeah, Jordan.
42 down to 8, Mark. You sure you don't need any more parking?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, it certainly at first glance it looks odd, and I think the interesting thing about the way these self-storage units operate is that there are a few spaces probably needed for people who are coming to like rent a unit for the first time, and so they would park by the main door, go into the office and rent a unit. Otherwise, what the owners found is that once they're rented up, pretty much everybody just goes in and parks by the units that has external access. There are some units that are internal access only, and so they would use that shared parking. But we also went back and reviewed all the sign-in logs for the existing self-storage operation that's there, as well as some of the other self-storage operations. And so the number of people that would come through the site in a day was very limited, like 1 per hour kind of thing, 2 per hour. So that's why Martin Group felt that 8 spaces would be sufficient, because their experience in all these other sites was that there's very low hour by hour customer presence. So.
Makes sense to me. Thanks.
Good. Any other questions from the committee members? No. Okay. So I'll now open the public portion of the meeting. Is anybody with us this evening to speak to the application for 95 Terry Fox Drive? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And are any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 95 Terry Fox Drive? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, are there any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 95 Terry Fox Drive? Please raise your virtual hand. And I see none, so I'll come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jordan and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is 8C, which is for 9 Morton Way. And Lindsay, could I have you introduce that into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance at 9 Morton Way. The file number is D13036-2021. Matthew LeBlanc is assigned to this application.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The
Yes.
purpose and effect of this application is to provide the applicant with relief from the required front and rear yard setbacks, as well as from provisions relating to dormers to accommodate the construction of a new 2-story dwelling with an attached garage. Next slide, please. Okay, so displayed on the left side of the screen here is the key map associated with this application, and on the right is the neighborhood context map, both of which were taken directly from the report exhibits for reference. Next slide, please. So in order to accommodate the proposed redevelopment, the applicant is requesting 4 variances in total, all of which relate to specific provisions listed under section 6.3 of bylaw 8499. So the first variance is being requested to reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 4.5 meters to 1.2 meters. And the second variance is being requested to reduce the minimum required rear yard setback from 7 meters to 5.8. Next slide, please. Additionally, the proposed attached garage, which will be shown later in this presentation, includes 3 partial dormers for which the third and fourth variances are being requested to accommodate. The third variance will be to decrease the proposed dormer setback from the building's main front wall from 40.6 centimeters down to 0. And the fourth and final variance is being requested to increase the combined length of all dormers from 4.6 meters to 6.07. Thank you. Next slide, please. So displayed on the left side of the screen here is the landscape plan submitted by the applicant, outlining the proposed improvements to existing landscaping on the site, as well as the enhancement of natural vegetation within the ribbon of life. Further to this, I wanted to note that CRCA staff have had the opportunity to review this proposal in full and have indicated that no negative impacts to either the water and/or shoreline are anticipated, as the proposed development is located outside of the minimum required 6-meter setback from the flooding hazard. Moving forward, on the right side of the screen, we have the plot plan submitted by the applicant, indicating both the location and scale of the proposed development. For reference, the shape outlined in light green there, it's a little bit small in that gray area, represents the footprint of the existing dwelling to be replaced, and the shape outlined in blue represents the footprint of the proposed dwelling and attached garage. And lastly, the footprint of the new driveway is also outlined just north of the attached garage. So something I also want to note here is, given the lot's irregular parcel fabric, which was touched on in the report, the front lot line is defined in the site-specific zone as the west property line, which abuts Morton Way, while the opposite yard, so to the right of the screen, the east yard, is recognized as the rear yard, despite the fact that each of these yards function as side yards. So as mentioned, the lot has frontage on Morton Way, which is a private road located on the Tet Center and Isabel Bader properties at 370 and 390 King Street West, respectively, over which the owner currently has a right-of-way. Next slide, please. So here are the north and south elevation renderings of the proposed dwelling and attached garage. So for reference, the north rendering represents the view of the dwelling from the neighboring property at 356 King Street West, while the south rendering represents the view from the shoreline of Lake Ontario. Next slide, please. And finally, here are the east and west elevation renderings. Again, the east rendering for reference represents the view from the neighboring property at 350 King Street West, and the west rendering at the bottom represents the view from Morton Way. Next slide, please. So since Morton Way is a private road, I wanted to highlight that the proposed reduced front yard setback won't be visible from the public realm whatsoever. And further to this point, there is currently a significant vegetative buffer separating the property from both Morton Way and the adjacent Tet Center, which is indicated on the slide, for which the applicant has indicated intentions of preserving, if not enhancing, to provide further visual screening. Next slide, please. In terms of public consultation, 2 signs were posted on the subject property, and a letter was mailed to 14 property owners located within the red boundary on the map to the right. At this time, no public comments have been received. And I know, Peter, you mentioned this at the beginning, but I just wanted to bring to the committee's attention that supplemental report number COA-21-061 is being provided as a part of this application in order to clarify the recommended conditions outlined in Exhibit A of this report. The purpose of this supplemental report is to, as you said, correct a duplication error. And aside from this, no additional or revised conditions are being proposed at this time. I'll note that the revised recommended conditions are attached to the supplemental report as Exhibit A and are referenced in the notice of decision accordingly. Next slide, please. To conclude, this application is being recommended for approval. I now hand it back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Great. Thanks very much for that. So at this point, then I'll now call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address, please.
Mark Howe, and representing the owner, and the owner is also available on the phone, and the architect is also here as well with us. Is there any questions?
Great. Okay. So committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or the agent or staff?
I thought that I would have some, but Mr. LeBlanc was so fulsome that I'm done. So thank you.
I'm completely done as well. Yeah. Any other committee members? No? Okay. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Are any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 9 Morton Way? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. Call number 2. Any members of the public here to speak to the application for 9 Morton Way, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And third and final call, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak to the application for 9 Morton Way? Please raise your virtual hand. And seeing none, I'll turn it back to the committee for a motion. So moved by, okay, hang on just a sec. Elizabeth, you have a comment or question?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just before we put the motion on the floor, we do need to vote on the supplemental first before we can vote on the application as a whole. So it will require 2 votes tonight.
2 votes. Okay, so everybody had the supplemental information in the addendum. Okay, so can we combine them together or do 2 separate votes, Elizabeth?
It requires 2 separate votes.
2
Mr.
separate
Chair.
votes. Okay, so on the addendum, we'll move that first. So moved by Jordan and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? No, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and that's carried. And then on the application, as in the agenda, okay, moved by Somnath and seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your hand. And that's again unanimously carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, and our final application this evening is number 8D, which is an application for minor variance for Colborne Street. So Lindsay, can I have you introduce that to the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 233 Colborne Street. The file number is D13026-2021, and the planner assigned to this application is Jason Partridge.
So through you, Chair, this is not a minor variance application for 233 Colborne Street, file number D13026-2021. Next slide, please. Purpose and effect of this minor variance application is to request relief from the requirements regarding the minimum setback from the rear lot line to legalize an existing under construction 16-unit residential townhouse building on the property. The resulting 16-unit residential townhouse building will be 390 square meters in size and complies with all minimum side yard, height, and landscape open space requirements in the zone. Next slide, please. So the one and only minor variance is for the rear yard setback. The requirement is 5.7 meters. The proposed is 5.9 meters, 5.9 meters. The requested meters is a total of 0.11 meters. Next slide, please. The subject property is located between Chatham and I believe it's Montreal Street on the right. Next slide, please. Here's a site plan of the under construction property right here. So what happened was during the building permit process, they were asked to send in an as-built survey, and upon a review from the planning department, it was determined that the rear yard setback did not meet, and we asked them to do a minor variance to correct this and legalize the under construction 16-unit residential building. Next slide, please. Its recommendation, requested variance application maintains the general intent and purpose of both the City of Kingston official plan and the zoning bylaw 499. Proposal is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structures, and the requested variances are minor in nature. As such, the proposed application meets all 4 tests under subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, and the application is being recommended for approval, subject to the proposed conditions. Approval of this application will allow for the legalization of an existing under construction 16-unit townhouse building on the property. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Did you hear me better that time?
Not really, about the same.
I logged in, I logged back out, and I tried.
We'll have to get you some better equipment. Okay, thanks for that, Jason. Okay, so committee members, I'm sorry, can I have the applicant identify themselves by name and address, please?
Yeah, hi everyone, Pete Sauerbrei. Address is 112 Country Club Drive. Don't really have anything else to add to what Jason said, so I'm happy to answer any questions if it comes up, but I think Jason summarized it appropriately.
Very good. Thank you. So committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Sauerbrei or the our planner? I don't have any as well. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Okay, I see no members of the public here, but I'll call anyway. Are any members of the public here to speak to the application for 233 Colborne Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And Lindsay, can you confirm that we have nobody in the public realm here? Or Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, I can confirm that we do not have any other members of the public with us at this time.
Okay, thanks. I'll close the public portion of the meeting and turn it back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jordan and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? None. So all in favor, raise your hand. And that's unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our agenda. So the next item on the agenda, we have no motions for this evening, no notices of motions. There's no other business unless any committee member wants to bring something up, which I see head shaking no. So no pieces of correspondence. So the date of the next meeting is August the 16th at 5:30 p.m. We all have that date. So now we are looking at a motion to adjourn. So moved by Somnath and seconded by Jordan. Any discussion? Well, all in favor, raise your hands. So the meeting is adjourned at 6:26 p.m. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in about a month. Take care.
Everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.